live stream. It's the first time I've set up this type of session. In fact, nobody is online because I've not told anybody. So this is a practice session, but it is streaming live, so I can test all the technology. And it's not just a practice. I'm going to provide some, hopefully, interesting information for you. And I thought as a topic, I'm going to talk about what I would call cascading queries. So to illustrate this, let me show you what I'm thinking about. I've got a data table here where I've got a list of manufacturers. And you can see the type of query I want to do is, first of all, I select the manufacturer. So I might select Chevrolet. And if I select Chevrolet, then I have a number of different models within that classification. So I then want to make a selection of which model. And this type of selection comes up quite a lot. So let's say if I'm in a manufacturing environment, I might select a family of products. And then within that family, there's individual products. So I'm going to start this from scratch. And the idea of the live sessions is that I'm posing this as a problem, but maybe this is, if you have a particular problem you're trying to solve in the Jump scripting language, then come along to these sessions and we can kind of work out the solutions together. I maybe on this example should have started off with a template script, but there's no harm starting from scratch. So, and if you want to follow along with this, then you can access these cars data. If you come to the help and come to sample index or the sample data, if you're on an earlier version Jump, the easiest thing is probably come straight to the alphabetical listing, and then you will find there's a couple of cars data sets. You can use either one, but this is the one I'm working with, cars 1993. And you will then have this data table. So from there, I'm just opening a new script window. And the first thing we should always do with scripts is to say names default to here. And this would be a good topic actually to discuss in a live session. Let's just make sure we can see all of that, so that should be fine. And the next thing I want to do is just get a reference to the data table, like so. Okay, now what I want to do is have a window, and I want to make a selection of the manufacturer. So I'm going to have a new window. I'll call it selection. And I always do exactly the same. I always have a border box, and I always say top 20, bottom 20. These are just margins. A bit tedious to write it, but it's worth doing. In fact, I might want more margin, 120 on the left and the right. And inside here, I'm going to have what's called, well, I could have a list box. Let's just have a list box. And just to show you what a list box does, I'm going to, it's going to display the contents of a list. So let me just create a list. A list is in curly brackets, A, B, C. Okay, so let's just run that and make sure that works. And here is my list. So what I want to do now is to change the list to be the names that I have in this column here for the manufacturer. So to do that, what I can do is say that my list, in fact, because I'm going to end up with more than one list, I'm going to call it list of the manufacturer. The data, what do I want? A column in this data table, and the column is the manufacturer. And I can get values from that column. And what this does is, instead of giving me a long list, it gives me a drop down. So if I run this now, those values now just appear in a drop down. But there's one subtlety here. The list box is quite clever. It recognizes that we're trying to show values in a list, and it displays unique values, whereas the combo box doesn't do that. And you'll see that there are duplicate entries in here because the underlying has got multiple rows for each of the manufacturers. So I need to do something, and what I didn't need to do was close my script window. I think I've just I've just deleted my script window. So this is what happens when you try and talk and code at the same time. Repetition is a good thing, right? So let's just do that again. Names default to here. and get a reference to our data table. Create my new window. Selection. Put my border box on. We're going to have bottom 20, and I'll put left and right. I think the left, I probably only need 60 or something, and right 60. So what I was saying is I want to have in here, let's just do that typo. What I want to have is a combo box this time. So my combo box is going to be the list of manufacturers, and that list of manufacturers is going to be the column DT manufacturer, remarkably difficult to type properly when you're live streaming. It's interesting. Okay, so that gets all the values. That's the same script as we had last time, and I'll try and remember. You know what? I should try and remember not to delete it, but just in case, I won't save. If I save, I might go off to places in my desktop which are private. So unless there's an option for me just to, I think there is. I want to practice this. There will be cases during the live stream where I might want to refer to a previous script I've written, and I kind of need to navigate for it, but without showing you things that that I don't want in the public domain. So I'm going to just make sure I can do this. I've thought about this, and I've got an image. I've got a kind of an image of my desktop which I can put up, and you won't see what's going on. So if I were to, let's just make sure I figure out how to do it. I kind of need to turn off my display capture. Right, so now you're seeing a jump window, but actually that is just an image. And I think if I go off and do things, you're not going to see it. So if I do a save, yeah, you're not seeing it. So that's cool. So that just makes it easier for me if I just want to hunt around for things in real time without worrying about what's being shown on YouTube. Bear with me then. I'm just going to save this script somewhere sensible so that if I choose to delete it, I'll have a backup copy. And let's pop it in here. And script 3, that would be a good enough name. Okay, so it's saved. Now I can turn you back on, and hopefully there you are. Right, so let me run this and verify it works. And now we have my window, and this is my drop-down list. And what I was pointing out is the fact that we have these duplicates. So I want to dedupe this list. So how am I going to do that? Well, to be honest, the way I do it in real projects is I have a function that does it, and I wrote that function probably 10 years ago, and I can't remember how I did it. And I suspect the way I did it was to use keys within an array because they are unique. So you can create an array based on this list and then get the keys for the array, and that list of keys will be a unique list. I'm not going to try and do that. I'm going to show you another method. This is a very useful function. Well, for illustration, think about a procedure you would do in Jump. You might do something like just do a distribution of the manufacturer. And if you did that, you will get a unique list here. So whenever we are generating summaries, just my voice is going a bit croaky. I'm hoping the sound is going to still be clear enough. Yeah, I think that the meter's looking okay. So if we're doing summaries of statistical summaries, we always end up with unique values. So can we do the similar sort of thing in code? Well, we can summarize our data. There's a function called summarize. And we can summarize by, and by is a keyword in here, and then the name of the column. And just to be totally explicit, I'm going to put an explicit reference to the data table. And this by manufacturer is going to return a list, and I can store that list as list menu, like so. So you have to get used to that notation, but this should give me a list, and it will get displayed in here. So let's see how that works. So now we can look at this, and now I have unique values. So Chevrolet, for example, only a single value. Audi, just a single value. So that's deduped. That's worked perfectly. Now what we want to do is the interesting thing. We don't want to have a single combo box, we want to have two. Now I can only put one thing inside a border box, and so if I want to have two things inside a border box, I can put them inside a container, and I'm going to use a vlist box container which organizes content vertically. So maybe you have the first combo box, maybe you have a bit of spacing, and the size is it horizontal units 0 and 6 pixels vertically. And then we're going to have another combo box, and this is going to be the list of models. And this list has to change every time you make a change or make a selection in here. So that's the challenge that we have. So I'm going to first of all just say I'm going to put this list to 0 or an empty list, and this is what we have. Oops. Unexpected end of input. Now it's kind of good if we're going to get the odd error as we go through this, because you can learn how to deal with errors. I think when people code, there's a temptation to be scared of errors, and the thing to do is click OK, right? Now the error's gone, or at least you can't see it. But actually the error is telling you something useful. So let's go back to the error. We can either run it again, or we can go to the log and take a closer look at the error. Now my log window's gone over here. Let me just grab it. So there's my log. And this is the error we had, unexpected end of input. That normally means I'm missing a semicolon. In fact, it says perhaps there's a missing comma or closing bracket, or it might be, and it tells me the line. That's useful. So it's line 16. So let's just see what we have here. So line 16, well, that's just the very end of this. So let's just check whether it said there's a missing comma or a missing bracket. I can see the error myself now, but let's show you how you can work this through. This closing bracket here closes this bracket. So the combo box has an open bracket and a closed bracket, and you can match the brackets by putting the cursor next to the parentheses. See, that's the close, and it highlights the open. So what's this closing? Well, this one is closing the border box, but I'm expecting this to be closing the new window, and there's nothing closing the new window. So what's actually happened is that, and this is why I'm using indenting. I'm expecting this to close the new window and this one to close the border box, but this is closing the vlist box because I don't have a corresponding closed bracket. So let's put the closed bracket there like so. So now that's fine. There's no harm having that comma there, but since it's the last display box, I don't really need it. So just to tidy it up, I'm going to have that. So now if I run this, I have my window, and this is the list of the manufacturers. And the idea will be, as I select different items, this will get populated. Well, I could say, well, it's going to always start with the first item in the list, so I could pre-populate it with the first item in the list. So let's do that. So let this be the model types where we have manufacturer. So how am I going to do that? Well, to do it, I'm going to use a concept known as, or an entity known as the row vector. So, or row matrix actually. So let's just put this in some code here. I can say that for this data table, I can ask to get the rows where, or get rows where, and I'm going to say where the manufacturer, and I'm going to use the colon notation for this. So this is the difference between, well, this is a text string and this is an object. So this is an object reference to the column. And I'm going to say where the column, I don't want, yeah, I do. I want the rows where the manufacturer is equal to the first item in this list. So I'm going to take that list and the first item, so in square brackets, I can reference the first item of the list. So that's going to give me the rows, and I'm just going to say rows equals. And maybe it's worth just verifying that works. So if I show rows, like so, and I'm just going to run that block of code. And if I run, in fact, to see it, I'm going to right click and show the embedded log. So now the output will appear down the bottom. So if I run this, and you can see rows 1 and 2. So the first 2 rows of the data table correspond to the first manufacturer, where the first manufacturer is Acura, and you've got 2 rows. So that looks like it's working perfectly. Okay, what am I going to do with those rows? Well, I want to use those rows to reference the model column. So what I can say is I can take the column DT model, and in square brackets I could, if I put 1, that would be the first row. But if I say rows, it's going to take that entire matrix of rows and give me values. So again, just let me illustrate that. If I say list models, it's picked out integer and legend, which are those 2 values. So that's working. So now if I run this, I have my manufacturer and I have my model. We could tidy this up a bit and make it more explicit. And I would like to see these the same size. So we can probably achieve both of those outcomes by using a list box. Let me show you the effect of not a list box, a lineup box. Let me show you what happens if we use a lineup box. I'll keep the vlist box, might be redundant, but I'm going to have a lineup box. And I'm going to say number of columns is 1. And that's it. So that's the closing bracket. So I'm going to get rid of the closing bracket, and these things are going to go inside the lineup box. And what the lineup box does is to make all of those elements the same width. N-row or N-col argument must be, it didn't like this here. It's not N-col, it's N-col. So now you see these are just the same size. And what I'm going to do is put some labels to the left. In fact, I could have 2 columns then probably. And I could say, well, first of all, we've got a text box, manufacturer, I don't want to spend too much time on the user interface. This is more about solving the particular problem, but let's just, it's nice just to tidy it up a little bit. So let's just try that and see what that looks like. Ugh, that's awful, isn't it? So what's happened there? I've got the spacer box, so it's not really 2 columns, is it? So do I need the spacer box? Probably not. I can put spacing in the whole of the lineup box. I'm going to put spacing of 6. So each of these elements will be separated both horizontally and vertically by 6 pixels. That would do. So I've got manufacturer and model. Now there is a lineup problem here, and this is a bit of a bugbear for me. Do you see that the text is not really sort of aligned centrally with the combo box, and we can fix that, but I think let's leave that as a separate discussion for another time. So we'll just work with this as it is. What I want to do is make a selection, for example, Chrysler, and when I do that, I want this list to update. That's the key feature we're trying to build. So how are we going to do that? Well, I need to detect an event, and the event is a user coming along and making a selection from this combo box. So I'm going to check the online help for combo box and just get the notation right to do that. So we have to rely on the scripting index, or it's a good practice to refer to this. And you can come to display boxes, and if I start typing combo box, here's my combo box, and there's a collection of messages that we can send. Now there will be a message which is to set a script, and this gives a script to run when the control is clicked. So when a user makes a click event, this script is going to get run. When we run the script, we're going to want to say get selected, and that gets the value of the script. So let's put this set script in place. There's an example here. Now for some display boxes it will and a set function, and which we're going to use. My preference is functions. but it's a bit more of a complex notation. Oh, nice! It's giving you an illustration. Do we want to do? Yeah, let's do the function. So you can see a sample code if you want to refer to that. I'm just going to kind of write out the code for this. So if I come to the new window, so we've got our new window, and afterwards, assuming this is not a modal window, I can do this straight afterwards. If it's a modal window, then I have to do it on an open event associated with the window. But I want to refer to this first of all, so I'm going to call this CB manufacturer or CB menu. So it's got a name, and then what I can do is CB menu, and I can say set function. And that was like I say, you can refer to the sample code that I just showed you. Hopefully I'll get this the correct syntax. And then there's a function in here. And the function takes an argument, this, which is a reference actually to this combo box, and it also has an index, which is the selection. And let's just verify I'm correct on that. Pretty sure that's right. So I'm just going to say show index. That's sufficient. I like to always say default local, so we try and avoid too much leakage in our function definitions. But let's make sure that index shows up. So if I run this now, and name unresolved, that's just a typo, I think. CCB should have been CB, I mistyped. Okay, so what we're looking for in the log, when I make a selection, 1, 2, BMW is the third item, and it says index is 3. So perfect. So we've got the selected value. So now what I want to do is pretty much this piece of code. So let's take that piece of code and do that. So I don't want to presume that DT is a defined variable. I'm going to redefine it. I'm going to say is equal to the current data table. And I'm doing this, but what do we have now? 1 is no longer 1. It's index, and I'm just going to be a little bit cautious. Oh, we need to probably rebuild the list of manufacturers. These variables are defined, but because names default to here, they ought not to be accessible through this function, although jump does like to leak functionality. It's one of the reasons I said default local. So we're going to just have to redefine a few of these. So that's the list manufacturer, and I think what I'll do is say the model is equal to the list of the manufacturers, and it's the third item. In fact, there's maybe a nicer way of doing this, which is say, what is this? We could actually say this combo object, and we can get the list. So the combo object, if we say get items, that's the list of items associated with that combo box. So list manufacturer is this, get items. Okay, so I've got my list, and now I'm going to say model is the third item. It's the indexed item there, and so now when the manufacturer get the rows where manufacturer, isn't it? So the third item of that list is the selected manufacturer, and so I'm just going to have that there. In fact, I'll just call it cell. That's the convention I normally use. So the selected value is the third item of that list. So then we're getting where the manufacturer is equal to that. It gives me the rows for this manufacturer, and then we can get the models. The last thing we want to do, in fact this could be done as one step, but I want to say that this thing, CB models, so CB models, the reverse of get items, we can say set items, and it's going to be list models. I think this will run. There's one thing I'm not happy with, but let's just run this. Okay, that is not the thing I was worrying about, but let's just focus on this. Unexpected end of input, similar type of problems before. Let's see, line 35, so it's coming at the very end. So this is the open for a set function, there's no close. So this closing is coming to this function. So this I'm expecting to be the close the function, and you can see we've got an open on the get rows where, and I've missed the close. So now everything should match. So let's run this again, and let's see what happens if I choose not an American, but I'm not recognizing those. Let's do a BMW or something. And okay, that looks like a BMW, so that's working. So that is the cascading query implemented and working. Let me just talk about the thing I'm not happy about. I am referring to CB models, which is here, and I'm really trying hard to not let global variables permeate through this script. And we do it first of all by saying names default to here. And in this function, I've sort of said default local, but Jump still insists on making this thing available. And you can just say, okay, fine, it works. But it might be in some future case it doesn't work, or in a particular use a different version of Jump it might not work, or a particular complex script it might sometimes work and sometimes not work. So what I would often do is say what this is doing is creating a default namespace called here. And what I often do is say, well, I'm going to actually create my own namespace. I'm going to call it GUI, and I'm going to say it's a new namespace. And I'm going to give it a name. And this is you should give it make sure it's a nice unique name, but you could call it just GUI for cascading query. And I normally put my company name to make it totally unique. So pegaanalytics.co.uk. So that's a nice unique name. And I'm going to use this as the namespace rather than rely on a default namespace. So I'm going to make it more explicit, and I'm going to put these names in the namespace like so. So now what I want to do is whenever I refer to these display boxes, I'm going to acknowledge the fact that they exist within this namespace. And then here, I think that's everywhere. And what I can now do is in this function get a reference to this namespace. It's not a new namespace now, it's just a namespace. And just take the name that I have here. This should be in blue, so it's a typo. There's an S missing. There we go, one bracket, so let's make sure that's correct. Then okay, so that's good. So everything that's now, think of a namespace as just a box, it's a container, it's a piece of memory that's got a name associated with it. But this name only has meaning in the context of this namespace. So on its own, it has to be referenced through the namespace, and we've given this a unique name. This namespace persists beyond this script, but it is kind of ring-fenced, if you like, so it's not going to interfere with anything else. So let's just make sure that works, and take the BMW and take, I don't know, Hyundai. I'm starting to get some people subscribed into the channel now, and so I'll be interested to know if you want to attend a live session, depending on the time zone you're living in, which time would be most convenient for you. I'm in the UK, London time, which is GMT +1, and I've listed 3 times, I think 10 AM, 2 PM and 5 PM, my local time. Let me know if any of those times would work best for you. It's probably going to be on a Friday, I'd imagine. And I can schedule some of these. I think it'll be quite a fun thing to do, and hopefully very informative for you. But let's see how this works. I'm going to stop this screaming and check the audio and video and see how this has turned out. So look forward to your comments following the description of this video. Thanks very much. Bye for now.